Why am I the villain again? Because I finally said what everyone was thinking? Because I chose the man who looked alive instead of the husband who made me feel trapped beside him? Fine. Blame me if that feels easier, but at our anniversary dinner, I thought I was the one walking away with the better man. My name is Simone Carter. I am 33, and I work as a senior PR crisis strategist, which means I know how to make ugly things sound reasonable. So I'm the bad one, right? The woman with the clean blazer, the sharp emails, the polished voice, the one who should have smiled through a marriage that made her feel smaller every week. The thing is, I never thought of myself as cruel. I thought of myself as awake. Nolan was my husband for 4 years, and before anyone decides he was the innocent one, they should know I did love him. Not in the weak way people say after they ruin something. I loved the man who used to leave paper notes inside my laptop before hard client meetings. I loved the man who remembered that cheap noodles on our balcony tasted better to me than expensive dinners when the city lights were blinking below us. Every Friday, he cooked those noodles in our narrow apartment kitchen while I sat outside with my heels kicked off. That night, 3 months before our anniversary, the balcony smelled like soy sauce and wet concrete because rain had passed through earlier. Nolan carried out 2 bowls and sat across from me, turning the silver watch on his wrist the way he did when he wanted to ask something careful. He asked if I still wanted the big anniversary dinner. His voice was soft, like he was touching a bruise. I said of course I did, because what was I supposed to do, cancel our marriage in advance? Then I made a joke about him acting older than his father lately. He did not laugh. He looked down at his bowl and asked what had changed between us. The thing is, that question made me angry, because it sounded innocent. Like the distance had arrived by itself. Like he had not spent 11 months turning quiet after he lost that promotion, coming home with his shoulders low, answering every hard question with later or not tonight. My phone lit up beside my glass. Lena had sent a message asking if I was still trapped on the retirement balcony with my sleepy husband. I smiled before I stopped myself. Nolan saw it. He did not ask who it was. That was always his problem. He waited for pain to explain itself. Then Daniel reacted to my story with one laughing message, and I smiled harder than I had all week. 6 weeks before our anniversary, Daniel asked me to meet him at a downtown coffee bar to talk about a surprise element for the dinner. That was the reason I gave Nolan. It sounded clean enough to survive being repeated. The coffee bar had brass lamps over tiny round tables, and the milk steamer kept screaming behind the counter. Daniel arrived in a charcoal coat, late by 7 minutes, but somehow made lateness look like confidence. He was Nolan's best friend from college, the kind of man who entered a room already forgiving himself. He said Nolan wanted the dinner to be special, but Nolan had no idea how to make a room feel alive. Then he smiled at me like we were both in on the same private joke. The thing is, I had spent months trying to drag words out of my husband. Daniel gave them away easily. He asked about my clients, my office politics, the executive I had saved from a media disaster that week. When I told him I had rewritten one apology statement 7 times because powerful men always wanted to sound sorry without giving anything back, Daniel said I was dangerous in the best way. So I'm the bad one for enjoying that? For sitting there with my coffee going cold because one man finally spoke to me like I was not background furniture? I told myself it was harmless. Daniel was part of Nolan's life before he was part of mine. That made it safer, at least in the version I liked using then. He knew the anniversary details because Nolan trusted him. He knew our table count because he helped with the booking. He knew I hated yellow roses because Nolan had told him once, years ago, when my mother sent them after a fight. That was what made the first lie so small. Daniel texted me later that night, saying the black dress from my profile photo would destroy the room. I typed something quick back, something bright and too pleased. Then I deleted it before going home. Not because it was explicit. It was not. It only sounded like I wanted him to say more. When I walked into the apartment, Nolan was at the kitchen counter cutting lemons for tea. The sink light made his face look tired. He asked why Daniel knew about the restaurant deposit when Nolan had not told him that part. I said Daniel was helping. I said Nolan should be grateful someone had the energy. Nolan put the knife down flat against the cutting board. He asked about Marco's birthday 2 nights earlier, when I had called him half asleep at life in front of everyone and then told people I was joking. He said it like a man reading from a list he wished he did not have to keep. I heard accusation. That was the filter I had by then. He was asking about one sentence, but I heard him asking me to soften, shrink, apologize for being the only person still alive in the room. I told him the thing is, people laugh when something is true enough to hurt. I said maybe he should ask himself why the joke landed. That changed the room. Nolan did not argue. He cleaned the knife, dried it, and left the lemons on the counter. The tea never got made. The next morning, I sent Lena a voice note from my office before my first client call. I told her Nolan was doing that innocent one routine again, standing there like a wounded saint because I dared to say what everyone noticed. Lena sent back 3 laughing messages and said I was too alive to be married to a man with failure energy. That phrase stayed with me. Failure energy. It sounded less cruel when someone else said it first. At work, I handled a reputation memo for a tech founder who had insulted half his staff in a leaked meeting. My job was to turn his arrogance into stress, his cruelty into pressure, his public shame into a chance for growth. I was good at that. I knew where to place the soft word. I knew which line could make an audience doubt what they had clearly heard. By lunch, Daniel texted again. He asked if Nolan was still sulking. I wrote that Nolan did not sulk, he dissolved. Then I stared at the message. 2 seconds. 3. I sent it. That was the first time I chose Daniel over Nolan in writing. Claire saw the next crack before most people did. Nolan's younger sister had been in the anniversary group chat because she was helping coordinate the cake. Someone asked whether the dinner should have speeches. I wrote that Nolan giving a speech might pull the whole room into loser gravity. Marco sent a laughing emoji. Tessa sent one too. Lena wrote that I was terrible, but she added 5 fire emojis after it. Claire sent nothing. Later that evening, Nolan asked why Claire had called him and sounded strange. I said maybe she was tired. He asked if something had happened in the chat. I told him no, and then I asked why every normal question had become an investigation in our home. He stepped back from the hallway mirror where he had been fixing his collar. His eyes moved over my face, not searching for proof, just looking for the woman who used to tell him things before he had to ask. He said he did not want to police me. He only wanted to understand when I had started enjoying making him look small. I heard control again. Of course I did. The innocent one says understand when he means obey. That was what I told myself while putting on earrings Daniel had complimented once in a photo. The thing is, Nolan could have fought harder there. He could have said I was hurting him. He could have made it impossible to pretend he did not care. Instead, he went quiet, and his quiet gave me room to keep building my case. By the time the anniversary invitations went out, everyone could feel something wrong, but nobody wanted to name it first. The anniversary restaurant sat on the corner of a hotel street where every window looked expensive. Nolan had reserved a private dining room with amber wall lights, heavy cream curtains, and a long table dressed in white linen. The room smelled like melted candle wax and steak sauce, rich and warm in a way that should have made the night feel safe. I wore the black dress. Daniel noticed before Nolan did. Or maybe Nolan noticed and chose not to say anything. Daniel's eyes touched the dress for half a second too long, then moved away like he was being careful. That should have told me something. It did not. I translated caution into hunger because hunger suited my story better. So I'm the bad one for wanting to be seen at my own anniversary dinner, for wanting someone to look at me like I had not become another chair at the table. Lena hugged me near the door and whispered that I looked like trouble. She meant it as praise. At least she did then. Marco was already drinking. Tessa asked where we were taking photos. Claire sat beside Nolan's mother, Vivian, with her hands folded around her water glass. Nolan wore a navy suit I had chosen for him years ago. The silver watch was on his wrist. He kept touching it, not nervously, more like he was making sure it was still there. Dinner began cleanly. That is the part people forget. The salad arrived. People talked about work, flights, restaurant prices, Tessa's new apartment. Nolan smiled in the right places. Daniel told a story from college about Nolan fixing a flat tire in the rain while everyone else complained. People laughed, and for a few minutes, I could almost see the man I had married through the man I had started resenting. Then Nolan stood for the toast. He held his glass with both hands. His voice was even, quiet enough that the room leaned toward him. He said 4 years of marriage had taught him that love was not always loud. He said I had carried him through seasons when he did not know how to ask for help. He said he was grateful for the life we were still building. Still building. The thing is, those words annoyed me more than any insult would have. Still building sounded like a contract he had renewed without asking me. It sounded like he could stand there, soft and decent, and make everyone forget the months when I had eaten dinner beside a wall. So I set my glass down. It made a small sound against the plate. Everyone looked over because people always look when a woman interrupts a careful man. I asked if I was supposed to clap for being described like a support beam in a house nobody wanted to live in anymore. Nolan turned his head slowly. He did not tell me to stop. That almost made me continue faster. I said the thing is, maybe love was not loud because he had made it boring. Maybe everyone in that room knew I had spent years dragging life into a man who had already quit. I asked if I was the bad one for finally refusing to disappear beside a loser. Daniel's face changed. Not much, just enough. A small tightness near his mouth, a glance toward Nolan, then toward the door. Agenda, I might call it now. At the time, I called it nerves. Marco stopped smiling. Tessa lowered her phone, but not before the red record dot had already been visible. Someone at the far end still had a phone angled toward the table, maybe because they thought it was a speech, maybe because people record anything that smells like drama. I looked at Daniel because by then the room had become a stage, and he was the proof I needed. I said Daniel made me remember what being alive felt like. I said Nolan's own best friend had shown me what a man looked like when he still had pulse, ambition, and heat. I said I was leaving my husband, and yes, I was choosing Daniel. There it was. The sentence landed across the plates, the candles, the glasses, the faces of people who had come to celebrate us. Claire stood up so fast her chair legs scraped the floor. Vivian closed her eyes. Lena gave one short laugh, the kind that escapes before a person understands the cost of joining it. Then she stopped. Daniel smiled. Not proudly. Not fully. A social smile trapped between wanting me and wanting distance from the wreckage. I did not see that. I saw confirmation. Then Nolan stood. He did it slowly, placing his napkin beside his plate first. His chair did not screech. His hands did not shake. He removed the silver watch from his wrist and placed it near his empty bread plate. He smiled. That smile has been explained back to me by people who were there, but they did not live inside the second when I saw it. It was not kind. It was not cruel. It was clean. Like he had been holding a rope between us for months and had finally opened his hand. He thanked everyone for coming. He said he hoped they remembered exactly what was said tonight. That was all. No shouting, no begging, no public wound for me to point at and call weakness. The innocent one had done something unfair by staying calm. That was what I thought then. I told myself his quiet was another performance, another way to make me look wild beside his dignity. Claire left first, walking past me without touching her dessert. Vivian followed after saying something to Nolan near the doorway that I could not hear. Marco stared into his glass. Tessa set her phone face down. Lena would not meet my eyes. Daniel leaned toward me and said, "Maybe we should step outside for air." I heard concern. I wanted to hear concern. Outside the dining room, Near a narrow hall lined with framed wine labels, Daniel said the announcement had been intense. He said he had not known I would say it like that. I told him the thing is, brave things always sound ugly to cowards at first. He did not answer quickly enough. Inside the room, through the glass panel in the door, the silver watch sat beside Nolan's plate. The candle near it burned lower, leaving a clear pool of wax. That watch had once meant he saved for 3 months because I said silver looked better on him than gold. Now it sat there like an object from a marriage neither of us wanted to pick up. I thought Nolan's smile meant weakness. For the first time, Nolan's silence belonged only to him. The next morning, the apartment had the strange neatness of a place after guests leave, though no one had come home with us. My heels were under the entry bench. Nolan's suit jacket hung over a dining chair. 2 anniversary cards sat unopened on the console table, their envelopes bright and stupid under the morning light. My phone had 11 missed calls. Tessa, Marco, an unknown number. Lena once, then only messages. Daniel had texted at 7:12 saying he needed the day to think because everything had become bigger than expected. Of course, bigger than expected was what hurt. Not because I had done anything wrong, I told myself, but because men liked brave women until bravery needed a chair beside them. The thing is, I was prepared for anger. Anger I could answer. I had whole speeches ready. I had a clean version about emotional abandonment, another about finally choosing myself, another about how public honesty was better than private betrayal. Nolan was in the bedroom. He sat in the grey chair by the window, fully dressed, holding the silver watch in his palm. Not wearing it, holding it. The watch looked smaller there, like something that had lost its use. He asked if I had slept. I said that was a strange question after he left me alone at the restaurant. He looked up. Not sharply. That was worse. He said I had not left him much of a marriage to stand beside. I told him not to play the innocent one with me. I said everyone was acting like I had attacked him out of nowhere when he had been absent for almost a year. Nolan nodded once. He did not deny it. He said he had been absent. He said he had been ashamed after losing the promotion, and he had handled that shame badly. Then he said absence was not the same as giving me permission to turn him into a joke in every room we shared. That should have annoyed me. It did annoy me. But something else opened under it. He looked down at the watch. His thumb moved over the face where the glass caught a strip of light from the blinds. He said he had bought it before our 2nd anniversary because I once told him his old watch made him look like a substitute teacher. He had laughed then. He had thought marriage meant letting someone tease the rough edges off you. His voice did not break. His shoulders did not shake. He just sat there with that small silver thing in his hand, and for a slow minute I could see him without my defense around him. Not as a loser, not as the innocent one. As a man who had been collecting my jokes quietly and trying to call them love because the alternative was too ugly. My hand was on the doorframe. I remember that because my ring clicked once against the painted wood. I almost saw the shape of it. I almost saw that Nolan's smile the night before had not meant he did not care. It meant he had stopped placing his pain in front of me and hoping I would step around it. The door opened then. Not the bedroom door. The other one. The one inside my head. Then I closed it. I told myself sadness was how men like Nolan kept women trapped. I told myself my mother had spent 15 years pitying a quiet man until pity became her whole personality. I told myself I would not kneel in front of a watch and call it a marriage. So I straightened my shoulders and said, the thing is, he was still making the story about his hurt, because that was easier than admitting he had failed as a husband. That changed him. Not visibly, not in a dramatic way. He placed the watch on the dresser instead of putting it back on. He did not look at it again. That was the first silent decision marker, though I did not call it that. I called it sulking. I called it dignity theatre. I called it anything except a man putting down the last object that tied him to the role I had mocked. Vivian messaged me before noon. Nolan's mother had never liked conflict. She usually wrapped disappointment in politeness until it became impossible to hold. This time she wrote only that she hoped the applause was worth the home. There had been no applause. That was the cruel part. I wanted to text that back. I wanted to tell her everyone was rewriting the room to make Nolan cleaner than he was. Instead, I locked my phone and went to the bathroom mirror. My face looked fine. That annoyed me too. A woman could ruin her anniversary dinner and still have mascara in place. I recorded a voice note to Lena. I said Nolan was doing the wounded saint routine again. I said Vivian had joined the family performance. I said Daniel was only overwhelmed because everyone had turned something honest into a scandal. Lena took 26 minutes to answer. Usually she answered before my phone dimmed. Her message said only that last night had been intense and maybe I should let things breathe. Let things breathe. From Lena, that was distance wearing a soft sweater. Later, Tessa cancelled brunch for the weekend, saying she had too much work. Marco removed himself from the anniversary chat without a goodbye. Claire did not respond when I sent a message saying she should not judge a marriage from one dinner. Nolan moved through the apartment like a guest with a deadline. He folded shirts into a small duffel. He took his laptop, 2 chargers, and the framed photo from our balcony trip to Chicago. Not the wedding portrait. That stayed on the shelf, turned slightly toward the wall. I asked where he was going. He said he would stay with Claire for a few days. I said running to his sister proved my point about him needing protection. He paused at the door. He said Claire had heard enough to stop calling protection weakness. The door closed softly behind him. No slam, no curse. No scene I could use later. By evening, the apartment still looked like ours, but the walls had stopped agreeing with me. 2 days after the anniversary dinner, I sat in my car under Daniel's loft, waiting beside a concrete pillar painted blue at the bottom. The parking garage smelled like oil, cold air, and old rain dragged in by tires. My public statement was open on my phone, and my thumb hovered over the screen like it was a launch button. That was my work brain taking over. Crisis, message, audience, timing. People think PR is lying, but most of it is choosing which true thing reaches the room first. I had a true thing. Nolan had been absent. Nolan had turned marriage into a quiet hallway where I kept knocking and hearing nothing. Nolan had let me become lonely beside him. So I'm the bad one if I wrote that down before everyone made me the villain. The thing is, I knew what people saw at the restaurant. They saw a wife humiliating her husband, choosing his best friend, smiling while the room went cold. I needed them to see the part before that. The months of silence. The dinners where I asked what was wrong and got a shrug. The bed where he turned away not because he hated me, but because he had no language for failure. My statement did not name Daniel at first. That was careful. It said I had chosen to leave a marriage where emotional absence had become normal. It said women are often punished for finally speaking after years of being unheard. It said I wished Nolan healing. That last line was beautiful. Even I admired it. I posted it. Then I sent it to Daniel. He came down 12 minutes later wearing a jacket and carrying his keys. He did not invite me upstairs. That was the first answer, though I refused to read it. He said the post might make things worse. He said Nolan was still his best friend. He said people were reacting badly and maybe we should slow down until everyone had space. Space. Breathe. Intense. All these soft words people use when they are backing away but want clean hands. I asked Daniel if he was ashamed now that the room had eyes. He said it was not that. He said I had made a public announcement he had not prepared for. He said he cared about me, but Nolan deserved a conversation too. That was when I laughed. Not because it was funny, because Daniel had been happy enough to drink my attention in private, happy enough to text me about dresses, happy enough to make me feel chosen while Nolan sat across from me shrinking. But now that the choice had a witness list, he wanted words like care and conversation. The thing is, Daniel was not leaving. Not yet. He was only protecting exits. I told him he could not make me brave in private and cautious in public. He looked toward the elevator, then back at me. His phone buzzed twice in his hand. He checked it both times. That little movement made me louder. I said people were only calling Nolan the innocent one because he was quiet. I said quiet men are easy to defend because nobody has to live inside their silence except their wives. Daniel asked me to lower my voice because voices carried in the garage. Then Nolan appeared near the elevator. For 1 second, the three of us stood in a triangle made of bad timing and concrete. Daniel looked guilty before Nolan said anything. That was how I understood Daniel had asked him to come. I turned on Daniel first. I said he had brought my husband here like I was a problem to manage. Daniel said he thought we should talk like adults. Nolan looked at him, then at me. His face was tired but not broken. That bothered me. I wanted some visible cost. I wanted proof that I had mattered enough to damage him. Instead, he looked like a man who had not slept, but had used the night well. He asked if the post was mine. I said yes. I said every word. He asked if I wanted to add the anniversary video to it so people could hear every word I chose there too. The garage went quiet in that practical way. A car passed one level above us. Its tires made a low dragging sound over the ramp. I told him he had stopped being my husband long before I looked at anyone else. That was the correct sentence. He did not refute it. He did not say I was lying. He stood there with both hands at his sides and said he knew. He said he had hidden in work shame, silence, and small chores because those were easier than admitting he did not know how to be needed by me anymore. For once, he gave me the admission I had wanted for months, and because I had already built my fire, I used it as fuel. I said then he should stop acting surprised that someone else had stepped into the space he abandoned. I said Daniel had made me feel alive while Nolan made me feel married to a ghost. I said I was done apologizing for choosing someone better. Daniel moved slightly at that word. Better. Like I had placed a crown on his head and it was heavier than he expected. Nolan looked at him then, not with hatred. That was what made the moment worse. He looked at Daniel like a friend who had become information. Then Nolan said he would not correct my pain if I told the truth, but he would not carry my lies. One clean sentence. No threat, no begging. He said he would handle everything properly now. I asked what properly meant. He did not answer. He walked past Daniel toward the elevator, and Daniel did not stop him. The doors opened, swallowed Nolan, and shut with a soft metal sound. Their silence was more frightening than any speech, but I did not say that then. I called it cowardice. When I got back in my car, I messaged Lena 3 times. First, a screenshot of the post. Then a message saying Daniel was acting strange. Then another saying Nolan had clearly been preparing some quiet martyr act. Lena watched my story and did not reply. That small absence sat on my screen like a locked door. By night, Daniel stopped answering quickly. Tessa did not like my post. Marco did not comment. Claire posted a photo of Nolan's dog from her apartment, which was how I learned he had taken the dog too. I told myself everyone was waiting for the noise to pass. The thing is, noise passing is not the same as people coming back. Before bed, I checked the anniversary video someone had sent me. I watched only the first 12 seconds. My voice sounded sharper than I remembered. Nolan's smile looked calmer than I wanted it to. I closed the video and put my phone face down. That night, the silence was not empty. It was organized. 9 days after the anniversary dinner, I arrived at the courthouse mediation waiting room in a cream blazer and low heels, dressed the way I dressed for difficult clients. The hallway smelled like copier heat and floor cleaner. Daniel was already there, standing near the vending machine, but he did not sit beside me. So I'm the bad one, and yet he looked more afraid of being seen with me than of losing me. The thing is, I thought we were there to discuss separation details. Then Avery Mills, the mediator assistant, confirmed my name and handed me a folder with a clipped stack of papers inside. Her face was neutral, which made it impossible to fight. The top page read, "Petition for Dissolution of Marriage." Under it were temporary financial orders, a request for exclusive use of the apartment, and a first hearing date set for May 17th. I read Nolan's name, then mine, then the date again. My thumb pressed so hard into the folder edge that the paper bent. Avery said the documents were for review and response, not debate. That sentence left me nowhere to stand. The proof was listed cleanly. The anniversary video, screenshots from the group chat, my public post. The voice note where I called Nolan a loser before the dinner. Claire was there with him when he entered, not Daniel. That detail cut through the room faster than any document. Nolan did not look like the innocent one. He looked clear. Daniel leaned toward me in the hallway and said he had never agreed to become the villain in Nolan's divorce. Then he walked away before my name was called. 30 days later, I had to leave the apartment unless the first hearing changed the temporary order. Our joint account was restricted to household expenses, and every transfer had to be explained. Claire blocked me, Marco left the group chat, and Tessa stopped inviting me anywhere couples might ask questions. Daniel sent Nolan one formal apology and stopped answering me after that hallway. At work, my boss removed me from a public reputation campaign because my private story had become office gossip. So I'm the bad one for leaving a loser. The thing is, Nolan did leave me alone inside that marriage before I ever touched the door. But I did not just leave him. I made him small enough for people to watch. I thought public truth would protect me. It proved I needed an audience to do what I was afraid to do quietly. The silver anniversary watch stayed on the balcony table when I packed my last box. The door closed behind me before I found anyone left to blame.